Hello, all. It's officially time for another tier list today. You're tuned in to The Real Kind of Mothra. Today we're going to be breaking away from the Wu, actually. I do have another Wu-Tang related video coming soon, but today we're going to be ranking more albums. Eminem's discography. Today we're going to be ranking. And this is just his official studio albums, no EPs, no collaboration albums, just the pure bloodline of Eminem's studio works. So let's just jump right into it. I'm gonna be ranking these from worst to best. I just organized it like this so that it looks good, but I'm gonna be. Last time I did try to rank it from the years they came out, but it did kind of feel like towards the end I was just kind of rushing through because there was nothing interesting to talk about. So this time we're just going to be going from most ass to least ass. And if you know Eminem, if you know his discography, you probably know what album is in dead last. Let's just get it out of the way. Yup. I'm sorry, but Revival was awful. Revival was so bad. I said Immobilarity was bad in the last video. Immobilarity dunks on Revival. Like, there are redeeming qualities to Immobilarity. There's some really good songs. Raekwon himself ain't that bad. It's just the production that I really don't like. Some of the songs are pretty forgettable. Just take that and multiply that by 20. And boom, you get Revival. Which, if you haven't noticed before, there's a reason that Eminem is facepalming on this cover. Because he's realized how bad this album is. Just looking at all the tracks, lining them up together, I think there's like what, 2 good songs on the album? I think Walk on Water, I liked Walk on Water, and Castle. And I guess like A Rose and River weren't terrible. I wouldn't call them good, but I wouldn't call them bad. Everything else? Let me load up Spotify. Like, a lot of these were forgettable tracks, but quite a few were also outright trash. Straight up, like, Chloroseptic was bad. Tragic Endings and Bad Husband were bad. Like, the lack of features is also what really hurts this album, because if we got more than just Eminem's trash, then it could have been something. Like, just looking at this track listing, some of these are forgettable. Chloroseptic was terrible. Same thing with these two. Like, and River, honestly would have preferred it without Ed Sheeran. Like these features, man. I get the Skylar Grey feature is tradition at this point, but why Ed Sheeran? You guys don't mesh together well at all. And then, yeah, Heat is also terrible. Same thing with Need Me. But when you get to the bottom, Castle and A Rose are 2 of the better tracks on this album. And Walk on Water is also the song that hits it off, the intro track, which again I liked. So it's not the worst thing in the world. I'd say Revival's like a 3 out of 10, possibly a 4 out of 10, but it's far and away his worst. Moving on to, by the way, this is the only one in D tier, obviously, but moving on to C tier. I did debate this for a while. There's really like 3 you could make the argument for. Because I think Revival is his only bad album. Every other album in his discography, I'd say, is good. But if you twisted my arm and forced me to choose, I'm going to put these 2 back to back. Music to Be Murdered By. Side A is better than Side B, but yeah, like, even though this is the second lowest, I don't hate Music to Be Murdered By. It is a good album. It just has problems. as we see, let me look at the track listing. Obviously, like, Godzilla is the one that everyone's going to be referring to when they think of, like the best cuts on this album. Godzilla's going to be in the conversation. Godzilla is a banger. And, like, that last part of the verse, literally a meme. And it is very impressive how fast Eminem is able to rap, and he's not even speaking in gibberish. You can very clearly understand what he's saying if you focus on the vocals. Lock It Up is hype. Lock It Up is fire. There are a couple of forgettable tracks, though. Like, No Regrets was mostly unremarkable. Same thing with Marsh. Honestly, Stepdad was... Yaya's fire, though. Black Thought and Q-Tip on Yaya gets me hype every time. Yeah, Leaving Heaven. Like, I mean, Eminem and Skylar Grey are probably going to be having a song on every single album onwards, so it's just something that we gotta brace. But yeah, Music to Be Murdered By is a good album. It's just that it does have a couple of issues, especially the B-side. I just wasn't that big on most of the B-sides tracks, honestly. I think the track with Dre and I think it was called Discombobulate. Is that the track? Let me see. Yeah. Discombobulated. Those were the only two that I was really, like, into. I can leave the rest. Yeah, Guns Blazing. Everything else, it's not awful. It's just not... It doesn't wow me. The B-side doesn't blow me away. For those reasons, they're in C tier, but... C tier by Eminem standards. As albums on their own, they're pretty good. Next up... his first studio album, which I don't know, like, should this even count? But the site lists it, so screw it. Infinite is his third worst studio album. Honestly, like, Infinite's good. It doesn't have much substance today. As you can tell that this is where Eminem started. This is where he was still trying to find his footing, but it's enjoyable. Today it's mostly just looked at as like a blueprint for Eminem's earlier works, but it's not awful in what it achieves, you know? This is kind of like a demo tape where this is really just here to showcase Eminem's abilities. And he does deliver. Like on the title track, I thought he did really well. It's one of my favorite Eminem songs, Infinite. But you can tell where he was influenced and what he was doing. Like, on Infinite specifically as well, I did hear him trying to, like, imitate AZ. You can tell he was influenced by Nas and AZ a ton in his earlier years. Which does have its benefits. I mean, I do like his delivery. It's not the same Slim Shady delivery that we're used to, but it's special, and I do admire it. Not much to talk about, though. Like I said, today this doesn't hold much substance because of the fact that it was pretty much just a demo tape. The fact that it's classified as a studio album is kind of dumb, but yeah, whatever. Rounding out the C tier, probably an album that most people would put below one of these two, but it's not awful. Encore isn't like the worst thing ever. No. Because I've seen people put it below Revival, and I think that's bullcrap. Because there is no defending Revival, alright? But there is something to be had with some of Encore. There is some merits to be had with Encore. Like, I guess it's one of Eminem's funnier albums. There is something to be said about comedy rap, even though that does alienate most of his audience, but Like it's pretty funny overall, but if we're judging these as songs, especially as Eminem songs, Christ, they're bad. Like looking at the track list, I think there aren't many songs that I'd say are like peak Eminem. Like obviously there's Mockingbird, which blew up recently for reasons I cannot discern. But there was also, I think, Like Toy Soldiers, Mosh, Just Lose It, and Spend Some Time. That I did. Oh, and Never Enough. I liked all those songs, unironically. However, there are duds. And, like, for every Mockingbird, there is another dud. You know? For every Mockingbird, there's a big weenie. For every Like Toy Soldiers, there's a puke. For every Mosh, there's an ass like that. For every Spend Some Time, there's a Rain Man. You know? Like, it's very inconsistent. It's a very polarizing and inconsistent album. Which I know now that it's because the album leaked before it released and he had to re-record some songs. But still, like, that sucks. Had the album been in its original state, where I think We As Americans was on the original cut of the album, and I love We As Americans. And there were a couple of other songs added in as well. Like, it's crazy to think that Eminem could have had 4 classics in a row. Like, that's a crazy thought. But unfortunately, Encore as it is right now is polarizing. Not bad, not great. It's solid. It's like a 5.5 out of 10. But, anyways, moving on to B tier. Oh god, I made a list before this, but I'm beginning to second guess this list. Because it is very close between my number 7 and my number 6. I'll go with Kamikaze to start off the B tier. Actually, I think those two are only B tier albums, but whatever. So Kamikaze, I believe this was his first surprise album. Which, if you know about the legend of how trash Revival was, you know why Kamikaze was dropped as a surprise album. Jesus. And honestly, I think he bounced back pretty well on this album. I think this is, like, modern Eminem at its best. Let me look at the track list for, like, the 5th time this video. Prepare to hear that quite a bit. Obviously, like, there are 2 songs that are complete garbage. Well, not complete garbage, just not good. Like, Nice Guy and Good Guy just are not good songs at all. Particularly Nice Guy. I don't know who was hyping either of Eminem or Jessie Reyez up in the studio when they recorded that, but it ain't good. However, most of this track listing besides that isn't half bad. Like, The Ringer is a great intro track. I do like Kamikaze and Fall quite a bit. And I do appreciate how he threw disses at so many people on this album with no remorse. Like, obviously, the Tyler, the Creator diss, that's not great. The word he called him is really tasteless and cruel. But besides that, I think he did it pretty well. Especially on songs like Lucky You, Not Alike. This is definitely the peak of modern Eminem, and I was interested to see where he would go after this. Rounding out the B tier that quickly, is Relapse, actually. I think of all the Eminem records, this is the one I've listened to the least, but I do like Relapse quite a bit. I don't get many of the complaints that people have with Relapse. Well, like I get some of them. Like the accents on many of the songs can get annoying, specifically on "We Made You," which is a very polarizing song. You either really like this song, like me, or you really hate it. But yeah, I do like "We Made You" quite a bit. I think it's a funny song, and it's also unironically a banger. Looking at the rest of this track list, "Careful What You Wish For" is beautiful. Same with "Deja Vu." "Crack a Bottle," it's alright. I think it took me watching Drewsom's ranking of Eminem that made me realize this was the lead single and not "We Made You." Like, "We Made You" fits the mold of the lead off single for Eminem. "Crack a Bottle," though? I don't know. But, like, "Crack a Bottle" is a good song. Both of these are good songs. It's just that this came out of left field. But the highs of this album are very high. Once again, "Careful What You Wish For" is a beautifully crafted song that, honestly, after you're done watching this video, if you haven't listened to it in a while or at all, check it out. Moving on, since I'm not that enamored with Relapse. Just objectively, it's a good album, and a good comeback album at that, too. This was his comeback after his overdose in 2007. In 5th place, starting the A tier, "Recovery." I hesitated for a second, but yeah, I do think his 5th is "Recovery." A very good album. I do like Eminem did pop rap very good on his album. There was one song on this that I wasn't a fan of. That's "White Trash Party," but other than that, you have "Love the Way You Lie," one of my favorite songs of all time. I think the lead single was "Not Afraid." "Not Afraid" is a banger, and it does age really well. "No Love" was also a banger. "Talking to Myself," "Going Through Changes." I think people, like, in terms of technical skill, this isn't Eminem's finest outing, but the production's nice, and what he's actually saying is very potent, especially on songs like "Talking to Myself," "Cold Wind Blows," and "Love the Way You Lie." So, if he's not rapping fast and all that junk, I can live with it. Moving on to 4th place, the Marshall Mathers LP2. Yeah, this is my top 3. What a shock, guys. What a surprise. But, yeah, honestly, I think this is a very underrated album. I think it's because people compare it to the Marshall Mathers LP1 a lot. But, even as a standalone record, I think 2 is very good. Like, I wasn't big on songs like "Berserk" or "A-Hole," but obviously you got "Rap God," which is a meme. But again, "Rap God" is such an impressive song. Just even from just from a technical standpoint, how fast he was going, especially in 2013, was crazy. But even what he's saying is funny. And he has very good lyricism in the song. I think "Love Game," yeah. The Kendrick feature. I know some people like to dog on this song, saying, "Oh, he wasted a Kendrick feature," but I don't really agree. I like the song overall. The parking lot skit, I think that continued the robbery from Criminal. I think Bad Guy is... I don't see a lot of people talking about Bad Guy, but I feel like it's a very important song. Same thing with Headlights, because they closed the doors on many of Eminem's past outings. Like Headlights, I think that's the song where he forgives his mother for what she's done for him, and that's a very heartwarming and potent thing to come from Eminem, which in these 3 records, we have seen him diss his mother over and over again. So to see that finally reach its natural conclusion is very nice. Now, top 3. Of course these were going to be the top 3. But in 3rd place, I have what many people would put at the top, and honestly, all of these are contenders for his best album. At number 3, we have the Eminem Show. The most recent of those 3. And I'd say all 3 of these are in my top 40 rap albums of all time. They are all of the utmost quality. However, the Eminem Show does have a few weak points. You know, like, when the music, there were some points of when the music stopped where I just wanted to quit. Like, Bizarre's verse was absolutely disgusting. Most of D12, honestly, like, the thing about D12 is that I could care less about most of the verses that aren't from Eminem. And Eminem's verse on When the Music Stops is really good. So, it does have its place on the album. It's just not my thing. I think Drips was also one of the weaker songs, but I do like Drips. I do like Obi Trice. Wish we got to see more of him. But those are the only, like, really weak points that I can discern. I didn't like the beat to Square Dance that much. Boo-hoo. But at the same time, I do like how he was coming after the U.S. government and their foreign affairs, so, which is very impressive to me. Same thing with White America. Like, as bad as Revival was, one of the criticisms I didn't get from that album was that, oh, he's getting political, but, like, Eminem's always been political. He just did it much better back in the day. He didn't fumble the bag on the Eminem Show like he did on this trash heap. And we saw that on White America and Square Dance. But even just as, like, for kooky, Slim Shady, Eminem, T.He, you got the lead single, Without Me, which everyone loves Without Me. You got Superman, which is pretty funny Mariah Carey diss, honestly. As well as a really good song. I do like the beat to it quite a bit. But you also get him at some of his most lyrical, like at Till I Collapse. The second and third verses on Till I Collapse are jaw-dropping. And Say What You Say as well. I've seen some Say What You Say slander, and it's unacceptable. But at the same time, on songs like Sing for the Moment and Haley's Song, you do see him being emotionally vulnerable, which is another thing that I respect from this album. It has Eminem at all fronts. And he does every single front very well, in my opinion. Now for the top 2. It's an interesting dilemma, because, well, my second place is Slim Shady LP, because, I mean, I like Slim Shady LP more than the Marshall Mathers LP, which is my first place, but objectively speaking, I do think Marshall Mathers LP is better in that regard. I think the Marshall Mathers LP is a better album overall, but let me touch on the Slim Shady LP real quick, because I do like it quite a bit. I'd say the main weakness of the album is the skits, honestly. Like, I've never been a fan of skits in general. I feel like they take away from the pacing of the album. But, like, there are a couple of funny skits. Like, the Paul skit's funny, but... And the Ken Kenneth skit, but other than that, lounge, soap, and a word that I cannot say on YouTube, yeah, I'm not really a fan. However, the songs are the highlights, obviously. It's a rap album, but I'd say outside of Come On Everybody, every song here has merit to it. I do like every other song on this album. My Name Is and Guilty Conscience are top 10 M songs. They're both highlights of the album. 97 Bonnie and Clyde, I did really enjoy, and it is also funny how it's the only one on this album that doesn't have an explicit marker attached to it, when it's literally the most explicit song on the album, literally about someone killing their mother, their daughter's mother, and disposing of the corpse. Like, of all the songs on this album to not play in the presence of children, this is number one for sure. But it's still a great song, even though it doesn't age particularly well. Rock Bottom is also peak Eminem in my opinion. Just and Still Don't Give an F are very enjoyable. As the World Turns and My Fault are pretty funny as well. My Fault, where he's like freaking gives someone shrooms. I did get quite a bit of enjoyment out of that. Overall, it is a funny album, but also a very important album for Eminem. Like, this is his major label debut, and he does strike a landing. But obviously, like, number one is Slim Shady, Marshall Mathers LP. I mean, you look at this track list and like, damn, it's very stacked. Like, Stan is in contention for his best song of all time. It's in my top 10 hip-hop songs of all time. It's such an important and potent song of his that how could you not? Like, it's the crown jewel of this album. Then you get to the silly stuff, like The Real Slim Shady. Like, one of his most popular songs. My personal favorite from the album, I personally have Stan as my second favorite, but The Real Slim Shady is just so enjoyable. As in terms of weak songs, though, like obviously Amityville sucks, but the weakest song on this album is probably Kim. Like, I guess on its own the song isn't terrible, but it just makes me uncomfortable to listen to, especially knowing what happened to Kim afterwards and all that. Just, it's not a great event. It's just not a great event. But in terms of features, now that I'm looking at this, obviously you got the D12 songs, Amityville, which Bizarre's verse is one of the worst verses I've ever heard. However, Under the Influence, I did like everyone's verse, honestly. And the fact that this is one of the weaker cuts off the album that's the Marshall Mathers LP for you. And I feel like Remember Me is also potentially his most underrated track, honestly. I loved Remember Me. Like, yeah, RBX's verse is whatever, but Eminem's verse is also a highlight, and Sticky Fingers is one of the best on the album, period. And you also got The Way I Am, one of his most lyrical songs, where he uses this incredibly, like, weird zigzaggy rhyme scheme that is a banger. You also got Kill You and Criminal and I'm Back, which is literally just Slim Shady going off. and the beats to songs such as Drug Ballad and Who Knew and The Real Slim Shady are also highlights as well. Once again, he's firing on all cylinders on this album, and for those reasons, it does take my number one spot. So there you go. That is all of Eminem's discography ranked. Let me know who I should rank next in the comments. But the next video is already like been decided on. But after that, I'm kind of open to doing anyone. I mostly focus on the 90s and the early mid-2000s. Those are my forte. So you will see videos based on around those times. But I'm open to doing anything, really. So leave a comment down below, and who knows, maybe I'll make a video off it. I'll see y'all later. Peace.